My take on fear is it's just an emotional response from a thought. That's all it is. I mean, we're born with two fears: fear of falling and fear of loud noises. Everything else is learned. It's passed down, it's modeled, it's absorbed. And when it comes to fear, it can always be traced back to a thought. What are you thinking that's making this fear happen? Usually it's fear of failure, it's fear of judgment, and even fear of success. Because with all of those comes one, acknowledging an insecurity, or change. That's where fear of success comes from. How is my life going to change? How are other people going to perceive me? What responsibilities are, and it's like all these things that we want, and then we're like, oh, fearful about it because what's going to change in our lives. And so for me, fear is just a thought. And that's the first tattoo I ever got, like 2016, 17, across my forearms. On one arm it says fear is just a thought, and the other arm it says thoughts can be changed. And it sounds simple, and it is. It's just not easy, because it's what we're doing with fear, tracing back to thoughts, is we're uncovering the unconscious program that's putting us into these loops in life. And when we can change that loop, then we can change our reality. The tricky thing about personality, which fear is a negative emotion that's installed into our personality and it dictates how we behave, is it's an unconscious program. It's been learned over time. The way habits are formed is through conscious repetition. The way learning is informed into our unconscious is through conscious repetition. So with fear, take the example I guess an example of fear for me, growing up, fear of money was always a thing. And I watched my parents work paycheck to paycheck. Somehow I got a bike. Somehow we always had food on the table and rent paid for and never went hungry or cold, or always had clothes and a ride to school or whatever it was. But I watched the program of fear in terms of finances run for 17 years of my life until I was out on my own. And it wasn't until I was into my mid to late 20s where I started to uncover that this isn't mine. This was inherited. This was modeled. This was observed. And I just had to keep tracing it back to my thoughts. What am I thinking right now? What is driving this fear? And there's a great quick example of an exercise people can do. It's called TEAR, T-E-A-R. You start with your thoughts. When you have a negative emotional response, whatever it is, fear, we're talking about fear. What are you thinking that's creating this fear? Okay, what are the actions that you're participating in now because of this fear? Okay, now what is the reality or the response you're getting from this thought, emotion, and action or behavior? And so if you look at it as thoughts trigger emotions, which influence behavior, which creates our reality, once you uncover that, then it's like, cool, now I know why I'm doing this. Now I know why I'm experiencing this aspect of my life. Now let's flip it. What do you want? What do you want to think? Can you think of something else that gives you a positive emotional response? You can use the example of like being excited for a trip, or being a kid excited for Christmas, or being excited to surprise someone, or being excited to see someone you haven't seen in a while, or being excited to do something you love to do. What emotions come up with that? Now, what behavior do you think you'll participate in because of that emotional state? Now, what results or what reality is that going to give you? It starts there, because now you're aware, you create an action plan to change it, and then through conscious repetition, can you rewire that part of your brain that is that program running to where you're no longer running off of fear, you're running off of gratitude, abundance, love. And for me, I realized that most of my, I think up until 25, 26, when I finally realized this, most of that time, if not all that time, especially my success in BMX, was fueled by anger and spite to prove people wrong. And then I learned through the brain tumor diagnoses that, oh, okay, this can only serve me so much. And it's causing a lot of problems in my life now. It's causing me to eat poorly. It's causing me to use alcohol to suppress the pain and the insecurities I have. I'm hiding behind my success in BMX. All these things. Now, after almost losing my life and literally dying on the flat ground of the contest a year after brain surgery, which is crazy to think about, 2011, I learned, okay, I can change how I fuel myself, literally and figuratively, I guess, nutritionally and mentally. And I decided to switch to being grateful for the opportunity I have to see another day. to be grateful to change what tomorrow looks like for me, what next year looks like for me, to be grateful to be able to share these things with other people to prevent something catastrophic happening in their life, to be grateful to be alive. Like shit, my mentored hero and friend, Dave Muir, took his life in 2016. 2 years later, my brother passed away the same manner, my younger brother. And so for me to understand that I'm here and I'm here for a reason, which is the reason I made up. I don't know if it's true or not, but human beings were meaning-making machines. There is no right or wrong. It is what it is, and we decide that. I made the meaning out of all these things and why I'm still alive, that I need to contribute to others. And I can't do that from fear and anger and guilt and shame and spite. I need to do that from gratitude. I need to do that from love. I need to do that from abundance and fulfillment and purpose and passion. And that's why I do what I do today. That's why I haven't ridden my BMX bike in 16 months, was because the identity challenge I had to go through. I had to overcome who I believed I was and who I was programming myself for years as, the BMX athlete. And I had to get rid of that gap of how I felt inside, that I'm much more than a BMX athlete, and what other people perceive me as the BMX athlete. I had to rewrite my story. But it took me years of conscious repetition and reminders to change that system. So going back to the TARE method, it's very simple. The challenging part about it, like, that's easy to do that. The hard part, the challenging part rather, not hard, it's challenging, is to catch yourself. It's to catch yourself either before, in the moment, or after. It doesn't matter. It's just to catch yourself with those old loops, those old programs. And then in that moment, whether it was after the fact, to say, what could I have done differently? What do I want to do differently? And how will that impact my life? Because when you can do that, you're changing the way your brain works to where you're going to get to the point where you catch yourself in your mind. Like, it's like you're pausing reality and you're catching yourself about to say something and you're like, oh, I'm not going to say that. And then that's how change actually occurs. And it works the same way with behavior and emotions. And it's the shit I have to remind myself every day of. Like, I mean, I'm facing a second brain surgery 11 years later in a couple months now. And it's like more relevant than ever because I have to practice these things. Well, I don't have to. It's just what I want to do. And I know I must if I want to be in the state I am today of confidence, of love, and thinking about other people. Like, of all things to be going through a brain surgery and to be thinking about other people, like, that's what's on my mind. I'm thinking about, I had to work through this too. This was a bit of a challenge a couple weeks ago, but like, I felt like a burden to other people that care about me. Because in my mind, it's easier for me to go through the shit than to be someone on the outside not knowing what they can do or not being able to do anything. But I continue to focus on other people and I want to help other people. So I'm trying to figure out, and I'm actually producing ways to leverage my circumstances to help other people, because I believe that we can be defined by the vision we hold in our mind, which is what created all the success in my life and allowed me to be alive today. I believe that's the only difference that people have to understand. It's just like, you are not your circumstances. You don't have to be defined by your circumstances. You don't have to be defined by your past. You don't have to be defined by what you do. You define who you are, and who you define yourself as is going to dictate your thoughts, your emotions, your behavior, and it's ultimately going to create your reality. The thing is, your reality is not fixed. Your destiny is not fixed. It's your habits that create it. You choose what habits you want to create. And one of my favorite quotes is, you don't choose your destiny. You choose your habits. Your habits create your destiny. And so coming back to fear, it's just one of my favorite things to talk about because I think it's the number one thing holding people back from doing what they want in life, whether that be overcoming a health challenge, that be starting a business, that be going all in on their dream, that be fulfilling a passion, that asking someone on a date, that asking for promotion, that giving a talk, that making a change in their life. It comes back to fear. And it always comes back to a thought that you are probably unaware of that takes either you doing this work or having a friend or hiring a coach or finding someone to support you by asking those challenging questions, and you being open enough to acknowledge this thought that usually society gave to me or my parents gave to me is not serving me because it's creating this emotional state, which is creating this behavior, which is not helping me get to where I want, which is creating this reality that I dislike. So if you can use that TARE method and then create an action plan of conscious repetition, even if you do something that you don't want to do, you catch yourself, oh shit, I did that, I should have done that, or I don't want to do that, what could I do next time? That's going to create more of an inspiration for your brain to think about that event that happens next time, to where usually you would have yelled at someone. Next time that happens, you're like, oh, I feel myself getting triggered. Do I want to yell? or do I want to respond with a question or walk away? And there'll be times where Jackie and I got into an argument a couple months ago, and I was so aware of my ego at work getting into the triggering of emotions, and I was like, don't do this. This isn't what you want. You just want to, but I felt my ego taking over and still participating in the argument, even though I knew I was wrong. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to let this go. I need to apologize, acknowledge I'm wrong. And it became funny at that moment because I felt like my true self being suppressed by my ego, which was, the ego is always acting out of fear, which is fine. It's trying to protect our lives. The difference is we're not living in caveman times. Most of the fear is projected and made up, and it's not real.